The refutation is set forth in Chandrakirti's clear words, right? So, this person complains, just outright says Chandrakirti doesn't have it right. And if it were right, a foot stepping on an area from the heel to the tips of the toes just plain wouldn't occur. Because the front and back portions each don't step on it, right? If the front portion stepped on it and the back portion stepped on it, then you'd have two areas being gone over. That would be pretty silly. And also a foot that does not include those front and back portions does not exist. So the person saying the foot has to include the front and back portions. That makes sense. So that's clear. Startlingly clear. Though the area in back of the toes, here it certainly seems that the toes are just the toes and not the front half of the foot, right? I mean, toes is not some weird way of referring to the front half of the foot, but just the toes. The area back of the toes is included within its gone over, right? Any problem with that? I mean, no, I shouldn't word it that way, as if you should have understood it. And anyone who didn't understand it is a fool, because that would cut out any question. Do you follow? I mean, I shouldn't have put it that way, because maybe you don't get it, and it's fine if you didn't get it, because the language looks pretty weird. The area in back of the toes is something you've already gone over. It's something, no, not you, the toes have already gone over. From the perspective of the toes have already gone over that, right? And the area in front of the heel, and so the heel, do you have a line at the end of your heel when you look at your, have you been looking at your heel as you're doing this examination? I don't know, I seem to remember that I have a line, sort of. A crease, but maybe that's just old age, along with the whiteness of the beard. So maybe I should get some colorization at Walmart. And next time I have a black beard. The area in back of the toes. I think I told you that at His Holiness's 80th birthday party, 80th? In New York? Yeah, 80th in New York, where some 60 people were invited to a sort of private birthday party in New York. He was looking at two of us at the same time. And, I was in line of a woman, an old friend of mine, and she obviously dyes her hair and doesn't wish to hide it from anybody that she dyes her hair. And my hair was extremely blonde because I just come back from Taipei, and the particular sun in Taipei turns my hair blonde. And so he caught both of us in line, much as I'm getting three of you in line right here. And he made fun of us for dyeing our hair. And I thought, oh, he's talking about me, but I just pretended he was talking about her, because he would never believe that it was the sun in Taipei. Nobody believes me, even people in Taipei, that it's the sun that's turning my hair blonde. Anyway, that's what was going through my mind. Anyway, the area in the back of the toes. Why did that appear? I somehow thought that was appropriate to relay. But you couldn't tell me why I thought it was appropriate. The area in the back of the toes is included with its going over, and though they're in front of the heel is, oh, the line of the heel. The line in the heel I was attributing to my old age. Yes, attributing the blondness of my hair to the sun. Is included within its not yet gone over. Okay. Now we get to the difficult part. The qualm that the area stepped on by the two of them. I think this is pretty easy. The area stepped on by the toes and the area stepped on by the heel together. What do you think about what I've chosen? Or the area in back of the toes and the area in front of the heel, the between area.
That's what he's talking about. The second one.
Oh. Shall we take a vote? We have a very weighty person coming in on number 2. Well, weighty people don't get, well, they do get some favor, don't they? They make you think twice before you cast a vote, but not much more than that. 3 times, maybe. The area stepped on by the toes and the area stepped on by the heel together. Yeah, I was leaning to number 2, frankly. I was going to move the number 2 in front of number 1. And then I thought, well, leave them where they are. Because if you take the area stepped on by the toes and the area stepped on by the heel together, then you get these 2 things with a space in between, you know, that's not being referred to. And down below, there's a reference to a between area.
I was wondering if you could say bounded by the heel and toes and heel or something like that.
Okay, which would be the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, so that's a third. Yeah, I thought of a third, and then by the time I started typing, so it would be the area bounded by the front of the toes. Do you mind that? Am I adding the front of?
Oh, not at all.
And
I don't know what I'm talking about.
And the back of the heels, right? I'm trying to make it clearer, your idea clearer. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is a third category that is not any of those 2. What do you say, Venerable?
I didn't understand this thing.
Huh?
That it said bounded by that.
Well, it
That
means
includes
extending from the very back of the heels to the very front of the toes. rather than the area in back of the toes to the area in front of the heel, which would be the intermediate area, which is quite different, which would be the between area, which means we're not talking about the second and the third are certainly not the same thing. We got three choices here.
What's the third? I don't.
The third is the whole foot.
Oh. Okay.
So your
You want to
Venerable's going to stick with number 2.
Yeah.
Nobody so far is with number 1. Please speak up, folks. Boris, where are you?
I think the number 2 is most likely candidate.
For this third category. That is,
How else do you get a third?
Yeah, the area between the toes and the heel.
oh, that's the second one.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Choices 1 and 3 don't seem to give you a third category that I can understand. How do you get a third category out of choices 1 and 3?
The area stepped on by the toes and the area stepped on by the heel. That would be just the area under the toes combined with the area stepped on by the heel and not the area stepped on by the middle. We have 1 vote from Vancouver for the area bounded by the front of the toes and the back of the heels.
I was actually, that's not quite right, because what I was thinking, I was just looking at the language only.
Yes.
I would have said the area bounded by the back of the toes and the front of the heel. It seemed to be an easier way to say it.
Oh, the back of the toes and the front of the heel.
Back of the heel, the area bounded by those 2 points.
Right.
2 lines. So in essence, it's not really different from number 2. It's just a different way of saying the same thing. I thought I was looking at kind of a way of putting it.
So bounded by the, oh, I follow. I took it exactly the opposite. Bounded by the back of the toes and the front of the heels.
Seems to be an easier way to say it in my mind.
Right. Well, no, I made it quite different from what you said. So that's the same as number 1. Right. So we have 1A and 2. My experience with looking closely into these is, even in the midst of conclusion, is that at some point when you look around, you sort of pick your head up a little bit, mind up a little bit, is, even when you're confused, is that some general clarity comes about because you're using the material of other parts of the analysis that are bringing you into this confusion. material from other parts are getting clearer, even if the point, the present point, is confusing. So it does happen for some people that if any point becomes confusing, they get rattled and then look for something that is not confusing. And at that point, they seek for something like protector worship that is very simple. You have your protector, I have my protector, and the two protectors can fight each other. Sort of like like a soap opera, and or sectarianism, or your college and my college. And, it's it can get really hideous, as if everything isn't crystal clear. But of course, what I usually find is that it does become crystal clear, because someone like Tsong-kha-pa writes in grammatically clear sentences. So the area stepped on by the two of them So what are our two choices? That we're talking about the middle area, or, okay, has not been eliminated, as in the case of the foot. Often if you read on, it's going to come clear. Furthermore, I felt I was getting somewhere in the game anyway today, because I began with this paragraph. Usually my mind is wearing down by the time I get here. Furthermore, if a path being gone over did not exist, a present path would not exist. That's clear. So we learned from this that the objector's talking about a path being gone over, some path presently being gone over. So that leads me right now to think that the person's talking about something that the whole foot, or, well, it could be either the whole foot or the middle part of the foot. In that case, a past path, and then Tsong-kha-pa, being the kind person that he is, and he repeats this obvious thing, of which an action has disintegrated, that means has finished, and a future path of which an action of going is not yet produced, also would not exist. So, in other words, this is quite obvious, we've got to have present going and a path presently being gone over.
Where is it?
Yeah, where is it? And that sentence that I'm having a problem with says it. Okay, and then Tsong-kha-pa's going to rephrase it in a sense and say, yeah, what you're talking about is right, but what we're talking about here is something that is inherently existent and has to obey the rules for something that inherently exists. In other words, something that solidly exists. And we can add that for the reasoning to work, that means that the way we live, the way our imagination works within ordinary life, we live within such solid existence. We imagine such solid existence, but not only that, our minds are set up so that things appear to be that solidly existent, even to our senses. This is a basic assertion of the consequent school. Now, how do we know this? And I commend to you what I recently put online, Tsong-kha-pa's Great Exposition of Special Insight, right on this topic. And, you know, the New Jersey group, you know, marvelously translated the whole of Tsong-kha-pa's Great Exposition of the Path, and of course, therefore, translated the whole of the section on the Great Exposition of Special Insight. What I have done is to translate three books by Jayasheba that lead into Tsong-kha-pa's discussion, and these are books 1, 2, and 3, and then I skipped a section of decisive analysis and went to the 5th, so 1, 2, 3, and then number 5. So 1, 2, 3, 5, and then I translated and published book 6, which is 5, 6. You can correct me if I'm wrong. 1, 2, 3. No, I skipped 4, and then brought out book 5, which is Tsong-kha-pa's Great Exposition of Special Insight. That's within this, that is on the material in this series. And did it along with what's called the 4 commentaries, the 4 interwoven commentaries, which really are, at this point, just 2 commentaries. The 4 interwoven commentaries has to mean that two of the commentators, if we make a joke, got tired out, and only 2 are left at this particular point in the Great Exposition of Special Insight. So we have the commentaries of Jayasheba and Jati Geshe Rinchen Turnru, one from Gomang and one from Saraje. And so I translated their interweaving, you know, what was interwoven of theirs, into Tsong-kha-pa's my own translation, which you'll see has to be, I mean, it can't be that different from what was done in New Jersey, which is Joshua Cutler and my previous student, shall we say. They're all previous now once they get their PhDs. They don't report into me. Guy Newland, and others, who some were and were not my students. And what Giant Sheba did was to make a highly complicated outline of what Tsong-kha-pa is doing. So he announces what Tsong-kha-pa is doing, which is tremendously valuable because Tsong-kha-pa moves fast. And it's easy not to recognize what Tsong-kha-pa is doing. And Giant Sheba announces, without feeding into it anything that's particularly Gomang or in his tradition, and you get, hey, this is what's going on here. Hey, he's switched, and he's now open your eyes. The next sentence is about, the next 2 or 3 sentences are about this, and he tells you openly what the meaning of the next 2 or 3 sentences are. And then he tells you what the meaning of the next 2 or 3 sentences are. And he tells you it's right announced in the headings. The headings are not short. And I sent a copy to John Avedon, and he said, wow, you can just memorize the headings, to get a bead on what's going on. And that doesn't mean you can stop reading Tsong-kha-pa. It just lets you know what's going on. And then Jati Geshe Rijin Tundrup from Serajay, he's not feeding into it, to Tsong-kha-pa's work, things that are particularly from the textbooks of Serajay. He's just helping you through Tsong-kha-pa's sentences by adding in a few words here and there, not just here and there, frequently. So Giant Sheba's outline is called Chendel Serkikolo. Annotations, the golden wheel of annotations. So once it's called the golden wheel, I put his in yellow, the translation and the Tibetan in yellow. And Gomang College nicely sent me his separate book in Tibetan in a form where I could just copy it and put the Tibetan into the Unicode version of the Tibetan. Just copy it and move it over on the computer. So I published the translation with the Tibetan, shall I use the word, interwoven into the translation, and then put Giant Sheba's outline in the Tibetan, and of course translated it in yellow. Gold, shall we call it, since it's the golden wheel of annotations. And then on my 50-inch screen here, which I'm looking at, in Vancouver it's 49.5 inches. With the Tibetan is just lovely on a 4K monitor to have it so clear. Got 2 versions of the so-called 4 annotations, and then with Jati Geshe's annotations, translated almost all of them, except those where I felt it was just simply redundant. Translated them into Tsong-kha-pa's text, and put those remarks in turquoise. And was a little bit afraid that here you got some stuff in black and white, that's Tsong-kha-pa, some stuff right in the middle of it that's in turquoise, and then you got Giant Shiba that's yellow, and I thought, oh my gosh, maybe people will go crazy. But of course you could print it out and it'll come out in more or less black and white. And of course it doesn't bother me, I get used to it. But you can tell what's from who by, if you care. But maybe you wouldn't care as you were reading it. But Tsong-kha-pa becomes all the clearer because you've got Dati Geshe, who's like, sitting next to you and giving you some extra words to make Tsong-kha-pa clearer. Okay, now what's the relevance here? You get these basic, where do these basic stances of Gelug come from? Well, right from this section, there are many sections, and this is a couple hundred pages out of a huge number of pages that fortunately in the group in New Jersey translated the whole thing. I'm just doing part of it on a distinct topic, which is called, the first section is called Opposite of the Consequences, which is what Buddhapalita, Bhavaviveka, and Chandrakirti are, I was going to say quarreling, but debating about, but quarreling, in a sense. They're arguing, not living contemporaneously, but at least, well, anyway, I don't need to refine that statement. Even if they may have overlapped a little bit, some of them, one or two of them. Well, you have to have two to have overlap. They weren't appearing together in person. There's a big debate, and emerged different strains of the middle way school, and then this having tremendous impact in Tibet, and eventually Chandrakirti's system winning the day, so to speak, but somebody like Giant Shiba having tremendous respect for all of them, but of course his own system in the end being Chandrakirti's. And what emerges from having such a clear outline and having such clear sentences is that you can really follow it. And what I have done is to put Tsong-kha-pa's presentation embedded with these two helpful commentaries together, and then Tsong-kha-pa separate in the same volume, and then it's probably about 2/3 or maybe even 3/4 of it in one volume, this being volume 5 in the series, having skipped Giant Shiba's decisive analysis of those 3 volumes, which I'm going to do afterwards, I hope. Well, I intend to. And then, so Tsong-kha-pa's first volume is number 5, this 3/4 of it, let's say, and I'm presently working on the rest of Tsong-kha-pa's presentation along with those 2 commentaries. And nowadays, shall we say, plodding. It's slow work, plodding through that. I originally, in this house in Uma, read that material, and the work I read it with Betsy, and what we were working on was recorded. That's a long time ago. So I commend to you Volume 5 to read Tsong-kha-pa and enjoy, read it together with the 2 commentaries, which is, called 4, and have a look at it and see where these basic Gelugpa stances come from. All right. So now, what Tsong-kha-pa wrote on, which I started to say, the controversy is in India is treated in 2 parts. Opposite of the consequences, which Tsong-kha-pa did not treat. Really, we treated a little bit, but Giant Sheba and so forth, all of the textbook authors in Tibet, in Gelugpa, treated at some length. And the second part is called compatibly appearing subjects. Subject, predicate, reason, example. If you're going to debate, you have a subject, predicate, a reason, and an example. And it's called compatibly appearing subjects. And that's what Tsong-kha-pa chose to write on in this section of the Great Exposition of Special Insight. Now, back to here. Chernikirti's clear words explains that the gone over and the not yet gone over. And then this is what, you notice how he says it again. This is like that, my kind teacher, Nolan Langdon, whose huge picture, huge, is here in front of me. Nolan Langdon saying over and over again, what's the gone over? That of which an action is disintegrated. The not yet gone over, that of which an action is not yet produced. Although, if a path being gone over, that is not any of these, a path being gone over. So now, what has he got to address? If a path being gone over that is not any of these did not exist, the fallacies as expressed would be incurred, would ensue. But here, it is not being propounded that a path being gone over that is not any of these 2 does not exist. We're not dealing with a dichotomy. In other words, he's saying, Chernikirti, Nagarjuna is not giving you the choice of, it's just 2 choices. It's either gone over or not gone over. Kind of looks like that, doesn't it? The path. In Tibetan, it's Song and Ma Song. Songwa and Ma Songwa. Song, Ma Song. In Sanskrit, Gata, Agata. It looks like dividing the path into two, a dichotomy. It's got to be one or the other. And then, well, there can't be any being going over because it's not Gata, it's not Agata, it's not Song, it's not Masongwa, it's not gone, it's not gone. Rather, within refuting and then the great translator Hopkins italicized His Holiness in front of a whole bunch of other worldwide, I won't say it. And he called me Sungyo Chemo in the front of the crowd in Switzerland. He called us all in. He called me in separately first. This is an old man trying to blow his own horn because his life is ending. Now I have grown old. My mind is bent. I no longer can think, but must tell stories of my old greatness. He called me in first. All the other... What?
That's the poem you translated from what was that language that you did?
Yeah, Anglo-Saxon. Yeah.
Anglo-Saxon.
Actually, it comes from hearing Dylan Thomas read his poetry.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, within refuting an inherently existent path being gone over, an action of going on, it is refuted. So this whole discourse, you see, that I began is, otherwise it looks fake. Otherwise it looks like, as Richard Robinson, my mentor at the University of Wisconsin, said, it's a straw man nowadays, straw person. You just fake something up and you say, well, it's not this, it's not that, and therefore it doesn't exist. And nobody ever held such a solid, forever existent thing in the first place, and you're just, getting somebody to buy a used car that doesn't have any axles, that's falling apart, and you trick them into buying it. And, if you're a jerk, you buy the logic, and you're lost, and you give your money to the guru, and if the guru asks for sex, you give it, and if the guru, has some absurd thing like needing another Cadillac, you'll buy the Cadillac, Rolls Royce or whatever it is. The guru says, give me your house and property in Boonesville, Virginia, and within a couple weeks of horror, my giving it up, I sign it over. Because the guru has some marvelously facile sales pitch, right? But once you catch how your mind is working, how your mind has a lingua. Lingua means concrete. What you're getting excited about, what you're getting angry at, what you know, as His Holiness says, something that you decide you're going to buy, or, this watch. My students gave me this watch at my retirement. Oh, that's the video. I was showing it to the video. And I thought, oh, that looks like gold on the top, but the bottom looks like steel. I thought, nah, not so good. But once they explained the bottom was platinum, so it's two-tone gold. What is it that? What's this smeared? What's his name? In the Three Rings, what is it called? What is it? Golem. What does he say? What's that word? Precious. Oh, precious. Precious. Oh, I can do it on my beard. Precious. Then it became very precious. So you see, even from the beginning, I was seeing it as inherently existent. Inherently existent. And then not so good. Later, when I had to replace the band, it was a leather band with a gold, latch or whatever you call it, buckle. It was something like $1,500 to replace the band. And I thought, precious, really precious. And what they wrote on the back of it was Rangsha Rangtro. It's self-appearing. Rangsha Rangtro. It's self-releasing. Quite the opposite of precious. From way back, with the first class of Nyingma teaching, wow, of Longchenpa. Yeah. How did I get started on that? What's the, huh? Yeah. But what was I going to do? Give this? No. What was the diversion point? We're on straw man.
What's the name of the new book on Uma that has all the stuff you were recommending we read?
Tsong-kha-pa's.
Is that right? What is a consequence?
Yes. What is a consequentialist? And actually, the very end of the next volume, the finishing volume is, at the very end says, that's the difference between an autonomous and a consequentialist. That's how Tsong-kha-pa finishes this section. So anyway. So let's stop there. That's a good point. This, you see, we're still within this section, and we're still figuring out the point, and hopefully I'll we'll see each other. Are we all available for, we're on for next time?
Yeah, we are.
So I'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.